What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to It's MJ Anime. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of the channel. We got our usual co-host Miles here,
Hey, what's up, guys?
and today we're going to be speaking about one of our favorite anime, an emotional roller coaster with some amazing animations, amazing action. We got Mob Psycho.
Man, this is a great anime. I don't know what else to say about it. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Miles just finished it. I finished this a while back, so excuse me if I'm a little rusty on the events, but mostly what we're going to be focusing on is not so much the plot events, but sort of the characters, because this is a very character-driven anime, as I like to say. But before we really dive deeper into it, um, please consider giving this video a like, comment your thoughts, and maybe subscribe if you want to stick around. Post notifications must go on. Let you know when we drop the video. But I mean, we got some new art for us coming out. I mean, we'll see. It might be out by the time this video is out, but look out for that. So yeah, let's get into this, Johnny. So
All
general
right.
thoughts.
So, like you said before, this is definitely a more character-driven anime rather than a plot anime, and I honestly think this is for the better because the plot is not as strong, but the characters are so every character that we're introduced to is really, really good. They all have great values, great development throughout the show, especially some of the main characters, which we'll get into in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, especially as this being like a 2-season anime, like it's very compact, and the pacing isn't bad at all. Like they managed to do it in such a well-paced manner that it's like
It
you
never
you
feels
think it.
rushed.
Yeah, you never think that it was this short of a show. Like I blazed through this in like 2 days. Like it's a great watch. If you couldn't tell enough, we really recommend it. But we're gonna dive deeper into right now. What are we gonna talk about, Miles?
You want to talk about the overall plot?
Yeah, all right.
So the plot starts off with we get introduced to this guy named Mob, right? Or named Shigeo. And Shigeo is pretty much the most bland character possible at face value. He's just a normal middle school kid, nothing really special about him. He rarely shows an expression on his face, and I think we'll get into that later. And he has this really eccentric master who's one of my favorite characters in all of anime now, Master Reagan, and the show pretty much centers around those two.
Yeah. So basically, Shigeo, or otherwise known as Mob, is a very he has basically social anxiety and isn't very comfortable around his friends or
He
friends.
doesn't
I
really
mean,
have friends.
yeah, like his acquaintances at school, or like his relationships. Like his relationship with his brother is very fleshed out. I mean, obviously, like you said, his relationship with Reagan is very fleshed out. And I think that's really what this show is about, the relationships between the characters and how they develop each other.
Yes. So the first little section, if I'm not mistaken, is just like we just said, an introduction to the characters, and then we get introduced to kind of the dynamics of Mob's school, I guess you could say, or his social life, where we figure out that, like we said before, he's not very popular. He really has no friends, so he pretty much gets forced into joining a club where he meets a bunch of new characters, I'm forgetting the people in the telepathy club, but we meet the main goats of the series, the fitness club. Everyone loves them.
The
Jack,
Body
I know you
Improvement
love
Club.
them. Oh, the Body
Yeah.
Improvement Club.
These guys are, it's the real MVP of this story. I mean, I say that like every episode to every character, but like, I mean, these guys are really there for Mob when he needs it most. They encourage him, like physically and mentally and emotionally, and like more than Reagan probably does.
They're
Definitely.
a huge reason for his development, in my opinion. I just realized we forgot to mention what makes Mob special is that he has psychic abilities. So
Right.
pretty much in this universe, there's only a few people. I'd say it's really rare, but some people are born with psychic abilities, where they can pretty much do like a whole bunch of different things, like just depending on what your like specialty is. So Mob is like we were gonna talk about this later, but he starts off as like the strongest character in pretty much the entire show.
Yeah, I mean, we get that through his fight with Hanazawa or Teru. Like we kind of realize like once Mob's emotions go to 100%, it really Mob's like definitely the strongest character in the verse as of like probably halfway through season 2. But I mean, like that's kind of how it is until we get deeper into the organization that is Claw, which is sort of the final villain. Um, they are trying to recruit these psychic children and like associates and basically people with psychic abilities, and they're trying to create this army of psychics and sort of, if I'm remember, yeah, taking over the world. I mean, it's a very simple concept and it works well for this show, and so I don't really have any problem with it.
Yeah, the villains. Another thing about this show is like the main cast carries the show so hard. The villains don't really have to be fleshed out, which I think is like insane writing that the show can be this good without like crazy good villains. I think that's just another thing.
Yeah, I think it's great because it's definitely something different from typical anime where there's a fight with the main villain and you get the villain's backstory, so you kind of get sort of like you develop sympathy for them and it's more emotional, and like when the villain dies, it's like the main character gets emotional after learning the backstory. It's just this whole process that's repeated over and over again, but Mob kind of broke that, at least from my perspective. It might have been done in other animes before, but I think especially in an action show like this, it's very uncommon for the main villain to be the main character's emotions and traumas.
Yeah, there was really no. Yeah, the main thing holding Mob back was, like you said, his emotions. He could pretty much destroy anyone at any time, but it was like him. That was due to his development. Like he grew throughout the entire show, and he began to realize, especially at the end, that you honestly have to use some force to try to like get the good result. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Mob for a second. Because I mean, I love Mob. He's my favorite character in the show. I just love his development. It's crazy how just smooth it is through 24 episodes. I just think the writing is incredible. But I think the main point that is very like people why people are attracted to Mob as a character is because of his humanity and vulnerability and how relatable he is to most of the viewers. And another one of the reasons why I love Mob is because through early fights with Teru, we kind of see how like you mentioned this briefly right before, but I just want to expand on this. But like he really has this deep wish to not use his emotions to hurt anyone, and I mean we see later in the show that might not be possible. But through early in the show, he works incredibly hard to keep his emotions suppressed, even though they are exponentially rising, especially in his fight with Teru. And when he goes berserk after he defeats Teru, you can see him like crying and really angry at himself for letting his emotions gain control of him. And that's something that I find really interesting in his character.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
All right, let's move on to Reagan, the other main character in the show.
I love Reagan. I think he is a brilliant character. So Reagan pretty much acts as comic relief, honestly, just a cool guy, and also Mob's teacher. And Reagan teaches Mob a countless amount of like really, really valuable lessons on on the deeper level, but on the surface they don't really seem that important. So Reagan tries to he's eventually originally he was only interested in Mob because he was a psychic and he thought that he could exploit Mob. But later he gets crazy development in like this 2 stretch of episodes where he realizes that he actually does need Mob more than Mob needs him. And I think this is really good because we get to see the inside of his character, where he's talking about like I just want to be known by everyone. I want to be something in this world. But he realizes he can't do that without Mob, who he's been taking advantage of for the past like 5 years. And it's just really interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up pretty much perfectly, but Reagan is he's like a fake psychic. He's a con man, pretty much, in a world of psychics, and people go to him to like lift curses off of them and stuff like that. And some of it's really stupid, but like some of it he gets like real clients and stuff like that. But and that's why it's funny. But like it's sort of interesting, like the parallel between the fact that he's a con man and he's like doing fake stuff, like to how he realizes later in the show that he's like he struggles with his self-worth, and like it's hard to describe, but like he's struggling with whether he's like fake or not, and like it's just very interesting to see him struggle with his own emotions. I mean, even when we seen earlier in the show that he's sort of this basically just a comic relief character, and a lot of time in anime you don't get emotional development for those type of characters. So I think it was just great writing, and very interesting to see that side of Reagan towards the end of the show.
Yeah, and I think he realizes that he's like, even in this one scene that stuck out to me was when he went to this bar, and he was like at this bar with a group of like a bunch of other sad people, and it was like his birthday, so and this was after he like already disassociated from Mob, because I'm getting on a tangent here, but anyway, so he pretty much goes to this bar with a bunch of sad people there who are like on the same level as him, and then Reagan tries to use them pretty much to boost his own ego, but then he comes back later after getting exposed that he's a fraud, and everyone there realizes what they were doing to him. And I think in that moment, Reagan realized he was literally no better than anyone else, so he just needs other people around him to like not upgrade, but to like get to his true self, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Going back to what you were saying, I like Mob's sort of development is really apparent when he sort of tells Reagan off and like stands up for himself against Reagan, because he realizes, like in the beginning, he's this clueless little middle school guy who doesn't realize he's being used for his psychic powers and is being exploited because he has no relationships and doesn't really understand them very well. But as he sort of develops these relationships and meets other people, he realizes that Reagan is indeed using him, and he stands up for himself, which is pretty amazing.
I would agree.
All right. We just want to mention some other side characters as well.
Another side character is one of the most underrated characters in the show, in my opinion, and that's Dimple. And I think Dimple, while he's also a bit of a comic relief character, actually serves a greater purpose in the show. And I think Dimple's purpose is like to be sort of the audience if they were in the show, or say what the reader or the watcher is thinking. Because Dimple, he's like literally like on Mob's shoulder, watching over him 24/7. He's pretty much with him all the time. And he's the one who tells Mob, like, if he's in a bad situation, he's like, Mob, you gotta run. He's pretty much the reality of the entire show, and I think that goes a little overlooked.
Yeah, I think you said it great. I think like if we were in the show, we would be Dimple, because we'd be like, because Mob doesn't realize the dangers of society and just social. He doesn't have that great social awareness. So like we do, and Dimple has. We sort of have to like get Mob to realize that like what situations he's getting himself into.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I also think Ritsu is a very interesting character. Like we said earlier, this show is very character driven, and it focuses on characters' struggles with themselves and others. But Ritsu has a character arc in the middle of the show where he actually gains psychic powers. Is that correct?
Yes, he does gain psychic powers.
Yeah, and it's revealed here that he has always sort of secretly resented Mob because of his psychic powers and how he's physically stronger than him, even though Ritsu's like the cool guy in school and sort of
like scared of Mob.
Yeah, like it was a very interesting dynamic between the two. I think Ritsu isn't a bad character. I think he's pretty solid. Go ahead.
I think Ritsu's actually a good character, and I think that his whole arc about being like he's not. I don't think it's that he resents Mob necessarily. I think it's that he feels completely inferior to him before he gets his psychic powers, because he knows that if Mob has one outbreak, like it could cause like massive destruction because he's so powerful. And I think that Ritsu just wants the power. He wants to be in control, which I think is his main struggle within himself.
Yeah, I mean, the side characters in Mob I think, are very good as well. Um, we also have Teru, who is the first villain in Mob Psycho. The first person to really challenge Mob's emotions in the show, and I think it's a very good, very big stepping point for him. Um, he eventually joins Mob's team practically, and I mean, in the beginning, we really saw his superiority complex, like because he was the perfect he was the perfect opposite of Mob. He used his psychic powers physically to gain more social fame and just better himself using the psychic powers. But Mob did the opposite, and he wanted to gain these relationships without using the psychic powers. And it's a very interesting, complex, and very interesting antithesis from Mob.
I would agree. I think that when during their fight, Teru felt like completely out. He knew he was outclassed, and this was like a huge shock to him because up until that point, he was like, "Dude, I'm the best. Like, I'm the strongest person I know. There's literally nobody that can stop me."
All right, and for the final section of this review, we're going to talk about the fights and animation because it is something that cannot go unnoticed. I mean, first off, like the animation is insane. Bones does an incredible job with this. I love Studio Bones. I think they've done amazing works in the past. And I mean, the fights are incredibly choreographed. And I mean, what are your thoughts? Like,
Dude, the fights in the show are. This is probably. Oh, I just had a massive voice crack. The fights in the show are like the best, I think, out of pretty much any anime I've watched. They're like the colors that they use. I know this sounds like probably pretty cringy, but the colors that they use are like really good. Like whenever someone uses their psychic powers. Also, like when they're in my favorite fight in the whole show, it wasn't actually the final fight. It was the one where all the like kids, Teru, all the members of the X-Claw members fought against the teleportation guy, and that was just like really, really well animated when he came through the building and they were in the air. Like that shit was crazy. I thought that was a great fight.
Yeah, we've mentioned this before to each other, but I think the animation style is more geared towards like Western cartoon, like that type of style, sort of like Rick and Morty or
The payoff is huge. I turned myself into a pickle, Morty!
Family Guy or like something or other like Big Mouth. Just sort of that animation style is more apparent, and it's really funny when they get these really close-up shots of like Reagan does his like gross face and like I don't know. There are a lot.
Refreshing.
Yeah, there are a lot of amazing touches to the animation. The soundtrack is great as well. I think it's like, but I mean, like the production is amazing. Like, what can I say?
The opening is also great. If that
99.9 is fire.
I love the opening. The fucking intro, like animation in that is really, really good. So the final fight I think was also animated like really, really well. It was just pretty much energy beams, and who doesn't like to see energy beams being shot? It's always pretty entertaining. But I think that there was the main villain, Suzuki, is actually a pretty underrated character in my opinion. I think that he and the umbrella guy, Saizawa, I think his name is Serizawa.
It's Serizawa.
Serizawa. Him and Serizawa have a great parallel. That is kind of like it's really, really similar to Reagan and Mobs.
Explain.
I think that it's like really, really, bro. I think it's similar because pretty much Serizawa and Mob are like in the same position. They were both at pretty much the most vulnerable points in their life, and they saw someone who was eventually using them pretty much, just being the light in their life that they had to rely on. And then they realized as the show went on that this was like that they were using them, and they came to their senses. And I think this was actually, I think Serizawa is an underrated character.
I think it's a very hidden gem in the show. I think it only makes you appreciate the show more.
Anything else we got to talk about?
I mean, that's it. I mean, final ratings.
Honestly, I would give it over a 10 out of 10. I don't think I did it justice. I think One Piece, that's my favorite, is 11 out of 10. I think this is closing in on a 10 and a half out of 10.
Bro, that's like not even in a 10 though. Like, just give it out of 10. Out of 10.
Out of 10, this is a 10 out of 10 show.
All right, I would give it a 9, but I'm really harsh on my ratings. Like, I only give like my favorite a 10 out of 10. But
Yeah,
I think this show is currently my third favorite show, or third favorite anime. And this was really just it's a great watch. We strongly recommend you go check this out. Yeah, is that all?
That's all I have to say.
All right. That's going to be it for ItsMJAnime. Please consider subscribing. Like the video if you made it this far. We appreciate it a lot. Thank you for watching. Hope you stick around for some more videos. And you can check out the next videos right here.